Warning, this podcast involves discussions of a spooky and graphic nature, not suitable for children or the faint of heart. Strong language and mature content is present. Listener discretion is advised. You have been warned.
Three spooked girls. Three spooked girls. When you want to hear about the paranormal, you get the spooked girls. True crime that makes you hypothermal. With the three spooked girls. Stabby snippets will give you dreams. Tara and Jessica will make you eyes gray, along with the spooked girls. Bring on the slaughter, we on that haunted ground. Spooked girls. The three spooked girls.
Hey Spooksters, and welcome back to another episode here on Three Spooked Girls. My name is Tara, and as always, I am here with my ghoul friend, Jessica.
Hello.
Hello, and today we are talking about the very fucked up case from Australia, Katherine Knight. Now, before we get into that though, if you would like to hang out with us on social media, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of our handles for that is Three Spooked Girls, and we have an amazing Facebook group. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Wine Wednesdays is about, oh no, this is May now. Sorry, we're recording early because, moving, my bad. But we're having Wine Wednesdays with Kelly. Ashley's doing our mug exchange in real time right now for us, and we have book club and all kinds of fun stuff. So definitely check it out if you want to hang out with us more over there. And we also have TikToks. Those are linked in the link tree as well. Come hang out with us on that fun app that we all know we all spend hours and hours scrolling on. So, literally, if I need to kill time, that's what I fucking do.
When Thomas went and got his vaccine, I was like, that's just 15 full 1 minute TikToks. And he's like, I can do that.
Dude, I've thought that way too. Oh my god, I love it. So yes, come find us there. I'm spooky_sleuth, and Jessica is spooky and Jessie. If you would like to support the show, you can join us on Patreon. For as little as $1 gets you 1 bonus episode a month. 2 and up, you get 3 bonus episodes. 5 and up, you get all of that plus video content, and we do a monthly live stream for our 5 and up patrons each month. But before we get into today's content, we are going to take a quick promo break, and we will be right back.
A duck blind on Reelfoot Lake in northwestern Tennessee becomes the unlikely site of a double homicide. Then the suspect's body is discovered floating in the murky waters nearby to the scene of the crime.
Maya Miliete goes missing from Chula Vista after a fight with her husband, leading friends and family to believe he might be involved.
Tune in to Murder Murder News, the Listen Edition, every Friday for the biggest true crime cases making headlines each week.
Subscribe to Murder Murder News, the Listen Edition, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Murder, murder, news.
All right, well, welcome back, guys. We are going to get into the Katherine Knight case, which I feel like, because the conversation of cannibalism has been kind of disturbing for some, I mean, it is disturbing, but
Can be disturbing.
Too disturbing for some people. I will give you the heads up. If you don't know what this case is, there are themes of that in here, and that is all I will say. And now I'm going to hand it to Jessica for the drink and our stuff, because I forgot about the fucking drink. I'm sorry.
It's okay. The good thing is I was going to handle the backstory, so it was the perfect segue for me to be like, drink.
Yes.
So since we're heading to the land down under, we're going to do an Aussie beachcomber, which looks delicious. It's yellowish. Yeah, it's got spiced rum in it. So head over to our
Pinterest.
Yeah, head over to our Pinterest where all our stuff is.
Yes.
I also we have a Pinterest. I don't know if you guys know this.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot with it, but we have one.
Drinks are on there.
If you want us to start doing things on Pinterest, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
We could put together some stuff, I'm sure.
Yes, probably. One day.
I can like a bunch of things into one folder. Like that I can do.
All right.
Okay, so let's talk about Katherine Knight. Okay. Trigger fucking warning. This is not a story that's like, Catherine grew up in a wonderful home and she just turned bad. This is like, oh, no fucking wonder. Okay, so Catherine Mary Knight was born on October 24th, 1955 to Ken Knight and Barbara Rohan in Tenterfield, New South Wales, Australia. Her home was very, very fucking dysfunctional. Like, which by the way, I have to say this because my biological parents are named Barbie and Ken, or Barbara and Ken. And I just find it interesting that her parents' names are Barbie and Ken or Barbara and Ken. And I'm like, oh God, we are two different people. For sure. For sure. But just in case anybody else wanted to know that fun fact, yes, I grew up being tormented that my biological parents' names were Barbie and Ken. And that's what they went by when they met each other. I'm pretty sure their wedding invitation was like Barbara hyphen Barbie.
Was it pink?
If it had been me planning their wedding, there would have been a lot of pink and a lot of Barbie. But I was not alive, thank God. Okay, so her home was very dysfunctional. Her mother, Barbara, at the time around her conception, kind of, was married to another man. And his name was Jack Rowan. And they had 4 sons together. And they lived in the town of Aberdeen, which is in New South Wales, Hunter Valley. I don't know where the Hunter Valley is, but I don't know, the way they made it sounded very beautiful. It said it was like really agriculture-y and like they have a lot of cattle. Cattle is a big thing there. So you're going to definitely want to think like agriculture-y. Just so that I can deal, I keep calling Barbara Babs in my notes. So if I call her Babs, just know I'm talking about Barbara.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. But, however, Miss Babs had another man on the side, which was Ken Knight, which is Catherine's father. And Ken was a coworker of Jack's, and they worked at the Aberdeen Meat Works, which was like basically everyone in Aberdeen at one point in time either had a member of their family work there or they worked there. It was kind of like where it is. So Jack actually was like the manager at the time, so he like ran the shit. And I just want you to like make a mental note here that Meat Works is a big part of this girl's life. Now, Aberdeen is like a little rural area, kind of like where you and I grew up, Tara. And basically the relationship between Ken and Babs basically like fucking blew the roof off of this community. And everyone was talking about it. How dare she sleep with her husband's coworker? It caused quite the stir.
Ah, the scandal.
Right? So eventually they would have to flee the area to escape the scandal. So they moved to a place called Moray. I think that's how it's said. Please don't at me. Or Moray. I did not write down how it sounded. I just took a note and moved on. I'm sorry, guys. None of her 4 sons went with her. So she was just like, bye. Like the 2 oldest ones stayed with Jack. And then the 2 younger ones went to live with one of their aunts in Sydney. And as far as the story goes, that's like the last we really hear of those 2. Bye-bye. So Barbara and Ken would go on to have 4 more children, including twin girls who were born in Tenterfield, which was Catherine Knight and her older sister, Joy. They were just minutes apart. They were twins. And then they would have 2 more boys later. When Catherine was 4, Jack, Barbara's original husband, he died. And the 2 older siblings came and lived with Barbara and Ken. This happened in 1959. It was said that Ken wasn't the nicest man on the planet. He was very abusive, and trigger warning, that would be both sexual and mental abuse. And it was done completely in view of their children. And it was said that Ken thought it was appropriate to rape his wife up to 10 times a day because he thought he could.
Oh my God.
He had the right to. Oof. Right. So this is like not happening like behind like a bedroom door. This is like physical and emotional and mental abuse being like completely displayed to these children. And I'm pretty sure the sexual abuse was like out in the open too, because it was saying Ken took it when Ken wanted it.
Gross.
The vibe. I got. And this also led to Babs being really inappropriate with the 2 girls, Catherine and Joy. She would tell them intimate details of her sex life, and she would go on to tell them that she actually hated men and hated sex, which is like weird because like she had an affair.
Right.
I'm like, okay. Catherine would later complain to her mother about like she had like one of her partners wanted her to do something like she didn't want to do. I don't know what that act was. It's left up to the imagination, your imagination, not mine. And Barbara told her to put up with it and stop complaining. So it was really more of like this, you just take it and deal with it. But Barbara was also very physically abusive back towards Ken. Like she would fight and she would like tear him down mentally. So it wasn't just like he was abusing her and they were watching this woman like wilt her away. It was like I think sexually, I don't think she was like the aggressor because obviously she said she hated sex and men. But I have a feeling that like when situations like that happened, she fought back like verbally or physically, which I think definitely had a lot to do with Catherine's love map. Like later in life, but kind of at this time, Catherine would start telling people that she had been sexually assaulted by various members of her family. She made the caveat that it wasn't her father. But like for me, I'm like, he like raped his wife on the regular, but didn't assault anyone else. Very specific. And she said that this had continued up until the age of 11. And later on, different family members would be like, yeah, she was sexually assaulted by like other members of the family. So I don't know if that was like older siblings or what. I have no idea. Everything is just speculation. Apart from her sister Joy, who was her twin, there's only one person that Catherine was close to, and that was her uncle Oscar. And he was a champion horseman, which I was like, that's so fun. Unfortunately, in 1969, he would commit suicide. But for our spooky people out there, she says that to this day, she still maintains contact with him through his ghost and that he visits her.
Okay.
So a little bit of paranormal in this true crime. In 1969, the family would actually end up moving back to Aberdeen, and she would attend Muswellabrook High School. And at first when I read this thing, I thought it said that she became a loner and was like picked on like by a bully. But no, that's not the statement that it was. It was that she was a loner and became a bully. And she would pick on like anyone who was like smaller than her, but she was really tall. So that was like, everyone. So she would like pick on them. And she even went as far as to harm one boy at school with a weapon.
Oh, God.
And then was once injured by a teacher who had to defend themselves in self-defense. However, when she wasn't being rage girl and stabbing people, which when it said hurt a boy with a weapon, I'm like, what did she stab him with? Or what did she hit him with? Because later you'll find she hits. She hits, guys. It was said that Catherine was a model student. She often earned awards in good behavior.
Oh, okay. How does that work?
I don't get it. Like, I attacked children one day, but the next day I'm getting like, she's an excellent student. If you're from Australia, please outline how your school system works and getting behavioral awards. Is it like weekly? This week you didn't stab someone, so good job. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe they're trying to like reinforce good behavior and not bad behavior. So maybe they're ahead of the curve. Well, she actually didn't stay in school very long because she would leave at the age of 15. At this point, she didn't know how to read or write. I'm assuming she learned somewhere later in life because she could read and write later. So I don't know if this is just like one of those weird little anecdotal things. Like she didn't learn to read or write, but like she probably did. Probably wasn't reading at like what a 15-year-old should be reading at. But she did get employment. And this is where the literal joy of Catherine's life would come in. She got a job at the local meat works place. And basically it's like a slaughterhouse. And when she first got there, it said that she worked in like the gross room, I think they said on the documentary, or the yuck room or something like that. I have a feeling it had to do with like entrails and whatnot and disposal. But then she moved up because 12 months after that, so when she's 16, she gets the job as a cutter. And basically what she does is she debones the animals. So she's literally like carving them up, and she gets her first set of butcher knives. And this is like her fucking prized possession. She would skin and debone animals, and she was skilled enough to cut out the marrow from the bone. And okay, I was watching this documentary. It's on the sources page. It's like Catherine Knight, like psycho, blah, 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 something like that. And the guy was like, it was nothing for people to come and watch her, like, or to come watch this happen at the slaughterhouse. I'm like, what is going on in Aberdeen in like the fucking 60s and 70s that your biggest form of entertainment is like, let's go to the observatory deck of the slaughterhouse and watch this 16-year-old cut up a cow.
I mean,
I feel bad for you guys, for shizzle. So she was very happy at her job. In fact, she was very good at her job. Very good at her job. And she was actually allowed to take her knives home because they belonged to her. And she would hang them up over her bed so that they would be handy, quote unquote, if she ever needed them. And she did this from that moment to the moment Tara's going to tell you about later. But unlike her mother, Catherine did not hate men. In fact, she loved men. And she would find, well, at least that we know of, her first love was a gentleman by the name of David Stanford Colliot. And they were co-workers, and they met in 1973. So she was 18. And they actually met because Catherine's brother worked at the same Aberdeen meat workplace, and they were friends. And then Catherine met him. But also, like, fun fact, ? David also dated her sister Joy. So, like, David was really, like, I think in terms of today, we might call him a fuck boy.
Okay.
But really more of, like, a party boy. And I think, like, he and Catherine, like, when they got serious and they started having sex, like, it was just like, oh my God, like, it was crazy. And they would party and drink and party and drink. And in that documentary I watched, it was funny because his mom was like, I think just one day they woke up and they were engaged. And I'm like, oh,
all right.
That has never happened to me. I mean, I know it happens to people in Vegas, like where they wake up married, but like, I don't know very many people who were like, oh my God, I woke up and I was engaged to this man. But they were, and they partied a lot, like a lot. In fact, they arrived drunk on David's motorcycle to their wedding. And as soon as they arrived, Beetle Babs pulled him aside and said, or this is what he said that she said. The old girl, meaning Babs, said to me, you better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her, like cheating on her. She'll fucking kill you. And that's what her mother was talking about. So this is like, you know, on my wedding day, my mother-in-law said something like, I'm glad you're part of my family now. It was a beautiful ceremony. I hope you have a happy life. No, she was like, you better fucking watch your P's and Q's because she will take away your P's and Q's. And if that doesn't scream toxic relationship, I don't know what does. And it doesn't get much better their wedding night because according to Catherine, her mother had told her that on her wedding night to her father, they had had sex at least 5 to 6 times, which I'm like, that's super inappropriate.
Yeah.
Right? Super inappropriate. I mean, it's kind of on the same par as like my mother-in-law getting mad the next day that people hung out with us in our room the night of my wedding. And she was like, but they didn't have alone time. I'm like, lady, we've been living together for 5 years. We don't need alone time. This isn't like your wedding night. But apparently David could only arise to the occasion a couple of times, maybe 3 times, and this made her really mad. So she tried to strangle him, upon which he woke up and they fought and he left. And then he came, like, this is the weird thing with these men. They like have this interaction that's like fucking deadly. We're not talking like, oh, she hit me in the back of the leg with a golf club and I left and then came back, which that's inappropriate. And if that's happening, you should seek help and like not go back. The shit that she did was like, I will fucking murder you. Like she had hands on throat. I'm like, okay. So the two had a very like toxic relationship and it just like it went like that. They'd get into fights. It'd be very like physical and then like he would leave and then he'd come back. And it was really funny because the narrator, one of the narrators of the documentary was like, why did the men come back? And he's like, the only answer is that she had to be good in bed.
Jesus.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Tip my hat to you, Catherine. But you crazy. So flash forward to May of 1976, shortly after giving birth to their first child, whose name was Melissa Ann. And I just like want to go back in time and hug Melissa Ann so much. But right after basically she was born, David left up and fucking moved to Queensland with another woman.
Oh.
And Catherine did not take this well. And he basically said, look, I'm leaving her. She's abusive. I can't take this anymore. Yes, we have a 2-month-old, but I can't fucking handle this. I get it. Like, she's crazy. Day 1, strangled. It can only go up from there, people. So after this happened, it was said that the next day, Catherine was seen like walking, and it's called a pram, which is like those old fancy looking like baby carriages, which every time they said pram, I kept thinking of like Gilmore Girls when like Lane is like, I don't know what the word is. And she's like, a pram? She's like, I can't be a mom. I don't know what pram is. Roy's like, I'm pretty sure you can be a mom without knowing what the word pram is. But so she was seen pushing the pram down the road or the street, but it wasn't like just like out for a walk. Like she was like, I don't know how to describe it other than like she was thrashing it from side to side and like violently like turning and twisting. It was very distressing. And at one point, somebody thought she was going to just like push the baby into traffic. And so the cops were called. This is like the thing about Aberdeen is like these people are like, I fucking call the police. So they called the police and the police came and they admitted her to St. Elmo's Hospital in Tamsworth. And she was diagnosed with with postpartum depression and spent several weeks recovering. That is not postpartum depression. I mean, it kind of is, but like if she hadn't had the already crazy history of like violence, I would have been like, yeah, that's postpartum depression. No, this was her throwing a fit that her husband left her. So then she was released a few weeks later and she got back her baby, which I'm like, okay. And she shortly after that took Melissa to the railroad line and placed her on the track minutes before a train was due.
Oh my God.
Then she stole an axe and went through the town threatening to kill several people and like swinging the axe over her head. But thank goodness for a man that they called Old Ted. He was like a convenience shop worker. He saw the whole thing happen and ran out and got Melissa.
Oh.
Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulled her away, and it was like said like literally in the nick of time, because I think by the time he got there, it was like the train was coming.
Yeah.
And it was just like only a couple minutes later that the train like went by. Catherine was arrested, and because she was having an episode, they took her to St. Elmo's Hospital, which she apparently recovered miraculously the same day and signed herself out. But didn't go so well, because a few days later, she was out and about and she was like, I am going to get David. I'm going to go get him and I'm going to bring him back and we're going to be a family. And she talked this like young woman into like, you know, taking her someplace, but she like slashed her in the face. And there was this like, the woman had children. So like basically the woman lied and said like one of her kids had asthma. And so this whole situation was causing him to hyperventilate. So Catherine was like, okay, get out. But then he ran to the police and then they found them. And then she was again institutionalized, but this time at the Morissette Psychiatric Hospital, because they basically had to like disarm her. They had to attack her. Like basically they went at her with like brooms and stuff. So they admitted her. So she told the nurses while she was in there that she intended to kill the mechanic who had fixed David's car, because if he hadn't fixed David's car, David could not have left. Right here, right in this moment, just deny, release, right the fuck there. She is talking about killing people. Like she is definitely gonna hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
She is going to harm herself or someone else. And she said that she was basically going to get like her mother-in-law to take her to Queensland to get him back, and then she was going to kill both of them. Basically, when they tell David what happened, he left his girlfriend and moved back to Aberdeen to support his mother, who was supporting Catherine. And in the documentary, they interview his sister and they interview his mother. David has since deceased, not because of Catherine. He had cancer and he died in like 2007. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure he would have been in this documentary.
Probably.
Like, I would have loved to hear his stories, because I'm sure these are like tip of the iceberg. At this point in time, it's August 9th, 1976, which is just like the original stuff happened in May.
Mm-hmm.
August, that's not that far apart. David, his mother, and good old Babs drive up to go get her the day she's released. They go up to get her from this facility, and Babs reaches into the car that David's driving and tries to pull him out and is basically strangling him, like mother, like daughter.
Yeah.
Catherine comes out and is like, what the fuck? And punches Babs in the head. David's mom, sweet David's mom, is in the backseat, just like, what is happening? And she was so grateful that Catherine saved David, because if Catherine hadn't come out, David would have died. Which I'm like, lady, why didn't you get out of the car?
Right.
Like, run into the facility, get help. No, sit in the car. So then they would get back together and they would reconcile their marriage. However, Catherine would cheat on David, which I thought was really ironic, because she does not like when people cheat on her, but totally okay with the other way around. Their relationship was very violent. In fact, when they went and had their second child, David came home late from a dart throwing contest, and she literally burnt all his clothes in the bathtub.
Oh.
And hit him over the head so hard with a frying pan that it fractured his skull.
Oh my God.
Right. But they would still reconcile,
Ugh.
even though he fled to a neighbor's house and collapsed. And he, like I said, was treated for his severe fractured skull. The police wanted to charge Catherine, but she changed her behavior so quickly that they were like, there's no way she did this.
Oh my God.
And like, he was drunk, so they're like, maybe he made this, because I do believe, I'm not a mental health professional, this woman, if there is no other disorder you could give her, is bipolar or manic depressive. His sister was like, she had mood swings. I'm like, mood swings? No, that's not mood swings.
Yeah, they later say she had borderline personality disorder, so.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what Trisha Paytas has?
Yeah.
But she is not violent.
Mm-mm.
They would go on to have a third child in 1983. Her name was Natasha, but their marriage would not be long past that because she actually left him. Basically what she did is he just like went to work and then came home and like all her shit was gone. She just fucking left him. And they got a divorce in 1984. She moved back to because I think they had moved away from Aberdeen for a little bit to like get away from the stigma that was happening. And so she moved back in. I think she moved in with her parents and then rented a house that was like nearby. And then she returned to work at her favorite place. However, she would end up injuring her back and be put on like disability. And then because, Australia doesn't hate their people, they actually helped her get like affordable housing with her disability. And so she didn't have to live with her parents and she didn't have to like rent a place, which was nice because she had children. And this actually made it very easy for her with her next boyfriend. His name is also David, but it's David Saunders, and they met in 1986. In just a few months, they moved in. He moved in with her and her daughters, and he also kept his old apartment in a place called Scone, which Catherine was like, I do not like, and made it very, very obvious to him that she did not like any time he spent away. Now, I get why a man who is 38 years old has his life, has an apartment, has a puppy, just wants to live on his own, but also with his girlfriend. And take into account that they'd only been dating a couple of months. That's not a long time to
Right.
give up your security. Also, what if he had a lease?
True.
What if his lease was like, let's say he signed a 2-year lease or something, and he's like, I can't get out of it. So I've been there. But everything would make her jealous, and she would like throw him out, and then he'd go back to his place and be like, whatever. And then she would be like, no, come back. I love you. Be with me again. And he would come back, and then they would have this it was basically that was the pattern. And so it'd be like, she'd be fine, and then she'd rage, and she'd be fine, and then she'd rage. And imagine those girls growing up watching this. It must have been crazy. Well, this went on for about a year. And then in May, which apparently May is just not her month, of 1987, her and David Saunders got into a fight. And he came home after the fight to see if everything was okay. And he walked into the kitchen and he thought she was feeding / with a bottle nursing his little puppy, his little dingo puppy is what they call it. And that was not the case. She had actually, trigger warning, animal abuse, she had cut the puppy's throat and the puppy was bleeding out in front of David. And then to make the whole thing, because mind you, she thinks he's having an affair. This is why he's doing this. And because she's quote unquote cranky, she then hits him in the back of the head with a frying pan, knocking him unconscious. So he walks in, he sees his puppy dying. She hits him in the head. I don't know about you, but I don't fucking trust people who hurt animals.
Right? No fucking thanks. Goodbye. Forever.
No. I mean, I understand, if someone squashes a spider, because, I don't like spiders. I've been bit by spiders, so I get it.
That's different, though.
Right. So, I don't know. Don't hurt things. Anyway, they didn't break up like a normal fucking person would, because she actually would give birth in June of 1988 to a daughter named Sarah, and it was David's child. David would put a deposit down on a house. That's the rational thought. The year before, kills my puppy. This year, buy a house. Check, check. And then eventually they would end up paying that off because she got a payout from workers' comp. So I think it became her house. And Catherine decorated the house with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty farm traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes, pitchforks. Basically, when she ran out of room, she started hanging shit on the ceiling. So nothing was uncovered. After an argument, which she hit Saunders in the face with an iron before stabbing him in the stomach with a pair of scissors, this was the last straw for him. He's like, fuck it, I'm out. Which is super interesting because there's a pattern with her. She gets in these relationships, it gets violent. She has children, they stay, it gets violent. Then there's just this one last fucking thing that they just I'm done. And mind you, I guess I don't mean to laugh, this is not funny, but when she was hitting, because it was an iron, you iron your clothes. When she was coming at him, she was holding his arm and he just kept swinging around, he kept turning, which I was super smart because she couldn't hit him because every time she'd go to hit him, he was turned around. But I was Catherine is stupid because you just go the other way. Because the way the lady was describing it was he just spun around. I'm does she not get the okay? But she would also stab him in the stomach, and he basically would leave her. And then when he decided, because he still had his apartment in Scone back then, he came back to like make amends. I think probably because of Sarah. That was my thought. He came home and found out that she had cut up all his clothes. So I'm like, oh, she's got that pattern down.
Yeah.
At this point in time, when he came back, she basically said that she was afraid of him and got like a protective order. But then they were like, no, never mind, whatever. And David basically came back in her life for a little bit longer. But then he pulled a Catherine and just straight fucking moved and was like, bye. And she got pissed, but it was like, whatever. She eventually got over it. Then she would meet a man around 1990 by the name of John Chillingworth. And he was 43. He also worked at the meat place. She likes her meat men. And in like 1991, she would end up giving birth to a baby named Eric. And their relationship didn't last very long. It only lasted like 3 years. And I really get the feeling that this John was a placeholder in her life. Like, she has abandonment issues for fucking sure. So I think she was just like, I'm going to stay with him until I find my next person. And they had a violent, crazy relationship, but like nothing was ever really like told about it. I think he just kind of took it. But a lot of the time that she was with John Chillingsworth, she was having an affair with a man by the name of John Price, which I guess would make it easy if you're, she has the pattern. It's David, John.
Can't fuck up their names because it's the same.
Right? Can just carry the rage on, angry. So John Charles Thomas Price, or as he was known as Pricey, which I thought was cute. I was like, that's an adorable nickname, was born April 4th, 1953. He was a father of 3 already when he met Catherine. And his marriage had ended like a few years prior. So he wasn't actually like cheating on anyone. She was the one having the affair. Mm-hmm. And his 2 older children lived with him, and their youngest with his wife lived with her because she was like a toddler, like 2. He had older daughters as well. Catherine and John had met in 1993, and they like kind of moved in with each other. It was like that, like my stuff is at your house kind of stuff. Not actually like we live together, but like 50% of my stuff is at your house, 50% of the stuff is at my house, because John was apprehensive about having her live there. And his daughters are on that documentary as well. And they actually were like, we liked her. Like, she was crazy, but we liked her. And one of his daughters was like, she was both good for my dad and bad for my dad. So I think they, like, in between the crazy, they probably had a good relationship. Mm-hmm. A few years later, in 1998, Catherine was like, hey, Pricey, we should get married. And he was like, no, thank you. Was basically what it was. Like, I don't want to marry you. Mm-hmm. And then from there on, she just went shit crazy. It's so fucked up. Like, there were these like little first aid kits, which probably didn't cost the company more than $20, if that. And it was like, he took it home. And I don't even know if he took it home to like keep it, or if he just like happened to take it home with him and just hadn't brought it back. Like, I don't know the things. He'd worked there for like 17 years or some shit. So like, I don't think it's like that big of a deal, though you shouldn't take things from your employer. Like, always check. But what she did is she went and videotaped that he had all of this stuff and said that he had purposely stolen it. And then she sent the videotape to the bosses, which meant John had to get fired for like a $20 fucking kit that they probably could have just asked him to return. Right. But she made it seem like he had purposely stolen it. Ugh. And I think also because of the allegations she made against him, they had no choice, That same day, she would kick him out, and she went and spread word around town. And people, like, they interviewed, like, her neighbor, and her neighbor's like, why would you do that?
Right.
And she's like, I don't know, because I can. And it's just, like, thinking, like, how could you do this to this man? Mm-hmm. Well, over the next few years, the assaults got like pretty crazy, including one time she stabbed him in the chest in February of 2000. God. So over the next few years, they would have these like crazy like fights and everything like that. And even at one point in time, Catherine decided to take the psychological fight to his kids and sat one of the daughters down and basically was like, I just want to let you know that like John isn't your dad, that your mom was sleeping around and John isn't your dad, which was like, this girl was like 13. She was like, what the fuck? But things would escalate pretty quickly in the year 2000. Early in February, there was a series of assaults that happened against Pricey from Catherine, including that she had stabbed him in the chest. And he was finally fed up and kicked her out of his house. But on February 29th of 2000, he actually told his boss, like, hey, I have to like go to court. I have to get like this restraining order put on her to keep myself and my children safe. And when he went to the court, they were like, it's going to take 3 weeks. So he basically went out that afternoon, hung out with some coworkers, just like chilled, and was just like, he went home really late. But that day, he had told his coworkers, listen, if I don't come to work tomorrow, she's killed me. And he went back to his house, but he went over to a neighbor's and stayed there till about 11 when he was going to go to bed. And then he went back over to his house, which now I'm going to hand it to Tara.
Yes. So Catherine actually ended up coming back to the house after he was asleep, and it was said she either came and like watched TV for a minute or did something, because I read like different things. She came home and did something. But moral of the story is she went up to the room and woke him up and they fucked. So then after that, they went back to sleep. Well, as we know, Catherine likes to keep her knives handy dandy, right? Yeah. Well, that'll come into play here in a moment. So, next morning, let's jump to that before I tell y'all all the tea on what happened. John's coworkers, they realized Pricey wasn't coming to work. Like, he wasn't there. And so his boss is like, oh, fuck, remember what he told us yesterday. So like, so-and-so, you need to like go to his house, see if he's there, see if he's okay. Well, when he did that, the neighbor was also kind of like up and about and saw that John's car was in the driveway, and it was after 6, and that's when his shift started. So he's like, oh, fuck. So the coworker and the neighbor, they went over there and they like knocked on the door and they're like, are you home? Blah, blah, blah. And they noticed there is blood on the mail slot, which they did the smart thing. They called authorities immediately. And there was 2 police officers who would respond to this, and they'd get there about 8 a.m.-ish. And one of them was Detective Sergeant Bob Wells. They said, that they saw his car in the driveway. They started with like knocking on the door, but no answer. And, they looked through the mail slot to see if they could see in. They saw the blood too, of course. And they described seeing what they thought was a curtain or blanket, but it was blocking the way from seeing anything else. So when they did see the blood, they decided to go around back, because there was like a back door they could, kick in or whatever and enter the home. So they did. And when they entered, they go towards the kitchen, whatnot, where this curtain blanket was. And one of the officers kind of brushed his arm against it to essentially move it out of the way. And he said he felt a coldness on his arm. And when he looked down, he saw it was covered in blood. They had just broken into the house. So at first he thought like, oh, maybe I scratched my arm and just didn't feel it because I'm on high alert and, adrenaline, trying to pay attention, that kind of thing. He's like, but then when I started looking at my arm, there was no wound. So he looked at said curtain again, and this is when the officers realized it was not a curtain, it was not a blanket, it was literally human skin hanging up what they described to be like a pelt. And this skin was hanging off of butcher hooks in like one of the doorways. Obviously, they're completely horrified already. So on top of that, they see a headless torso on the ground. I also read she moved either, I don't think it was the torso, I'm assuming it was the lower part of the body, because like no spoilers, like I'll explain more of this later, but articles are a little limited with this case. But anyways, that's why I'm telling you guys like all the different shit I found. Anyway, there was some reports saying that, I'm assuming, like I said, the lower half of his torso, she had moved that to his favorite chair in the lounge room or living room, and she crossed the legs over, and there was like a bottle of soda with it. Like, what the fuck?
Oh, Catherine, you crazy bitch.
Yes. So yeah, there's that. Oh, God. It's gonna get worse, guys, though. It's gonna get worse. So they see all this. Obviously, they're like, holy fucking shit. And there is blood every fucking where. On the walls, on the floors, on the door, all of that. And I will get into that in a minute because it kind of helped them piece things together. So they go into the kitchen and it looks pretty normal. Looks like a normal kitchen. It actually looks like someone was preparing dinner. There was utensils out. There was a table set with nameplates. There was gravy, baked potatoes, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, squash, and steak cooked, or what they thought was steak. And with all of that, they noticed there was a pot still boiling on the stove. And at this point, they kind of just like looked at each other and were like, I bet we can fucking guess what's in there. It was John's head. So from there, they are like, holy fucking shit. Like, one of the docs I watched, they had the officers who responded to this in there. And oh my God, I just wanted to hug them because they were like valid. Fucking like still so torn up about this so many years later, you know, because oh my God, how can you recover from that? But they were basically like, this was literally like a horror movie. Something you would not expect to see in real life. Like, yes, they're cops and stuff, but holy shit, who the fuck plans for that to happen? Nobody. Like, oh my God.
Especially in like a rural little town.
Right, exactly. So they start clearing the house, obviously, because like they don't know if there's any other victims, because they don't know it's Catherine, obviously. But who did this is hiding, waiting to attack them, what have you. So they go, they go upstairs or whatever, and they hear snoring. They find Catherine in bed, just passed the fuck out. She isn't waking up or responding to them, so they take I don't know why they did. Maybe they thought it was safer outside, but they took her to the backyard and just like laid her on the grass.
I thought that was like it was a weird thing. I was like, I don't get it. Why?
Yeah.
Like, cool. I mean, I guess if they thought maybe someone else was in the house with them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
So yeah, they took her outside. They called an ambulance. What they also saw in the backyard was said dinner that was in the kitchen. There was also a plate of it out by the dog. So you can do what you want with that. But a little spoiler in case you're wondering, like, why the fuck she just passed the fuck out. She took a bunch of pills and different sleeping medications, like, after this crime, apparently. Because, like, obviously, if Catherine was innocent, why would we have talked about her for the past, like, X amount of minutes? So they get more people there, obviously, and to look at the scene, and they start looking at, like, the blood spatter and everything through the house to try to piece things together, because they take Catherine to the hospital, and they're like, yeah, homegirl's gonna be in a coma. Like, she is out for the count, so we got some time to try to see what the fuck. And basically, like, I feel like the easiest way to do it is kind of like do a side-by-side of like what happened and what led them to that as far as like the blood patterns and stuff goes. So, okay. After the restraining order and stuff, like I said, Catherine came back home, they fucked, all that, blah, blah, blah. Well, after he goes back to sleep, what does she do? She grabs her handy dandy bedtime butcher knife next to her fucking bed, and she attacks John, who's asleep, and she stabs him 37 times. And now I'm going to reference the blood spatter a lot, and that's because Catherine doesn't really like to talk about details. So, authorities have had to piece things together, essentially, for the most part. So from the blood spatter patterns, they were able to conclude that once she started stabbing him in the bed, John attempted to get up and obviously get the fuck away from her. And they found blood on the light switch, like he was trying to turn it on or at least get out the door type of thing. And from there, in their hallway, there was big blood smears all down the hallway. And as they were getting closer to going to like the main area and the living room and front door and stuff, like the smears were getting lower and bigger. So he was bleeding out and losing strength is what they thought. And then what's so sad is like he actually gets to the front door. Like I mentioned earlier, there's blood on, like they saw it when they looked through the mail slot and all that shit. But he actually got to the front door. And by the front door, there was a puddle and then smear marks where she had obviously dragged him, and she drug him to that lounge room, right? And in the lounge room, there was big puddles of blood and whatnot. So they were like, okay, this is where she dismembered him, skinned him, whatever else she did. And you can also see drip marks. So like that also confirmed she took the head and carried that into the kitchen, like there was drips. And then also she took out 5 pieces from his backside. And that was the steaks, or what they thought was steaks. And when they looked at all of the like utensils and stuff in there, they found bloody handprints on it, like on the knives, and there was like a pitcher and things like that. And the table was set and there was nameplates, and those were reserved for John's children on them. Now, like I mentioned, Catherine was in a coma for several days. They would finally be able to talk with her 5 days after his death. And the authorities said they did a really lengthy interview, but it was pretty much pointless because they got nothing from that. She conveniently said she couldn't remember anything at all, that, she had no clue what happened, blah, 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 amnesia. And the thing they thought was weird was she accepted that she did kill John. She didn't try to protest at all. She was just like, okay, yeah, makes sense type of thing. And they're just like, okay. And like I said, stuff is limited on this, but apparently at first, like, not a lot of people knew. And I was kind of like, what the fuck? Probably because we're like American. If this had happened here, it would have been fucking everywhere. We would have fucking known about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So apparently what had happened was the like main reporter on this, he actually had morals, and not saying reporters don't, but I'm just saying like he wanted to protect the public. Basically, he was like, this is too horrific, this is too graphic, this is too much. So the piece he was going to do, he decided not to do it, basically. So, you know, out of like respect for John and his family. So obviously Catherine's full of shit. They knew that. She would be charged for John's murder. And also interesting fact, after she murdered him, she took a shower, which we've seen this in quite a bit of like horrific crimes. She took a shower, put clean clothes on, took his wallet, went to an ATM, and withdrew $1,000. And this was at like midnight. So like she killed him shortly after he got home, basically. I don't know if she skinned him and whatnot then and maybe came back. I don't know what the timeline with that is, but like she took out $1,000 and police have never found this money. And they tried to get it out of her to like ask her about it. And she's just like, what money? I don't know. I don't remember. Blah, blah, blah. You know, so just weird. But you know, she just went and did whatever. Who knows? Now, Catherine's team, as far as when they went to court, this is kind of interesting. So she was going to offer to plead guilty to manslaughter, but the courts were like, no, fuck you. And she was arraigned on March 2nd, 2001 on the charge of murdering Pricey. And she entered a not guilty plea. And her trial was supposed to start on July 23rd of 2001. But apparently her lawyer was like sick or something. So they pushed it back to October 15th of 2001. And when they had the trial going on, the judge there was Justice Barry O'Keefe. They had essentially gotten like 60 people. They were, I want to say drafting, you know, leaving for jury selection, right?
I like drafting. It sounds a little bit more like...
I know. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's wrong with me today. Drafting for the jury. That's what we'll go with now. That's new. There you go. They had 60 people. And basically because this is such a fucking horrific crime, they're like, if you need to excuse yourself, like, please do. And only 5 people did that. Only 5 people were like, okay, bye. So I was like, okay, well.
They weren't feeling very like doing their civic duty that day.
When the witness list was read out, a bunch more had to leave. And it said after that, it left the jury impaneled. They just didn't have enough people. And then attorneys talked to the judge, and then they adjourned to the following day. And then they come back to court, and Catherine's like, oh, just kidding. I want to plead guilty. And this judge is like, excuse me, what the fuck? What do you think you're trying to do? Basically, this will come into play in a second. So because she did this, the jury was dismissed. And after this, he decided to order a psychiatric assessment for her to see if she could, you know, stand trial and understand the consequences of switching her plea to guilty and all of that stuff. And basically, her defense lawyer was being like, you know, they were going to play up the amnesia and say she had dissociation with all of this going on, so she wasn't in her right mind, etc., which, like, you know, psychiatrists are like, if that's legit, okay, yeah, that's legit, but we're gonna check. And, you know, basically her switching her plea like this is like long game for an appeal later on to be like, no, I was not in my right state of mind when I pled guilty, so blah, blah, blah. But she did get deemed sane. She was seen by 2 different psychiatrists for that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, this is when they had diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder.
Makes sense.
Yes. And that whole like thing with the guilty plea is obviously speculation, but that's what most people assume. And that's what I agree. She knows what the fuck she's doing with being a toxic, crazy bitch. Like, just saying.
Right.
So I agreed with that. And even though she was going to plead guilty and stuff, she was like, no, I'm not responsible for this. I just need to be let go. It's fine. Not, you know, whatever. And then at her sentencing, her lawyer actually had the fucking nerve to be like, can Catherine be excused to avoid hearing some of the facts from this case? Bitch, you were there. You did it.
Well, it's setting up that whole like amnesia, didn't know what I was doing. The fact that she had to be like removed from the court because it was too much. He's very good. He's a very good lawyer.
Oh, the judge was like, fuck you. No, she's staying.
Right. No, I mean, the judge was like, I call bullshit. But like, if he hadn't even tried, like, he's also playing long game.
Oh, yeah. And it continues because, like, once they started talking about the crime scene and the decapitation and the skinning, like all of that stuff, Catherine decided to start acting out. Like, she started screaming. She started, like, throwing a fit. In articles, they were like, she became, quote, hysterical. It was so bad, they literally had to sedate her, which, in my opinion, again, it's her trying to set up this groundwork for later on. But on November 8th, Justice O'Keefe pointed out that the nature of the crime and her lack of remorse required a severe penalty. He sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and her paperwork would actually be marked, quote, never to be released.
Damn.
Right? It's like, he ain't letting you get shit. Fuck off. And so Catherine was actually the very first woman to get a life without parole sentencing in Australia history.
I mean, that's saying something because Australia was founded on criminals, like where the British Empire sent their criminals.
Right.
That says a lot.
Yeah. Now, in 2006, in June 2006, of course, she tried to get an appeal, claiming that life in prison without possibility of parole was too severe for the crime she committed.
She murdered a man.
She didn't just murder a man. It's not like she just went stabby-stabbed the end. She stabby-stabbed 37 times, skinned him, decapitated him, put pieces of his body other places, was gonna try to feed him to his fucking kids. Like, Catherine, no. Honey, no.
I'm just really, like, that's ballsy. Like, that's, like, the cojones on this woman is just like, you know what? I think this is how I'm gonna go. Not like I'm insane. No, I don't think what I did was that wrong. Like, I should be let out.
Yeah, right?
Promise not to do it again.
What world do you live in? Jesus Christ. So there was 2 justices that looked at this, or no, 3. Peter McLennan, Michael Adams, and Megan Latham. They obviously were like, no, bitch. They declined this. And Justice McLennan wrote in his judgment, quote, this is an appalling crime, almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society, end quote. AKA the professional way to say, fuck no, bitch, goodbye. So what has little Miss fucking Catherine been up to since? Well, she has found God.
Of course.
Or religion. Of course. This is fucking, what's her name all over again? Jesus.
Carla Faye Tucker.
Yes, thank you. I'm like, I can't remember her name right now. She also likes to paint and knit, and she is known as the Queen Bee among the other prisoners, and she is said to be with other convicted murderers, quote, baby killers, and drug dealers.
I mean, let's be real here. If you're sitting in prison and you're looking at her and you're like, yeah, but she carved up a dude and tried to feed him to someone. I ain't fucking with that shit. It's a whole other level of energy of crazy.
Yeah, no. And apparently it said that police officers keep an eye on her, like, literally at all times. She's not allowed near any knives. Good. And she can't even have a cellmate because they're worried she'll kill them.
I mean,
well, this is valid because she's tried to kill multiple people.
She's also like, she tried to strangle her first husband or her only husband, you know? She crazy. She cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yes. And there is actually a book out about her and everything. It is called Green is the New Black by James Phelps. And they pulled some excerpts from an article. So I'm going to this is talking about like her in prison now. So I'm going to read through it. This will be on the sources page too if you want to check it out. So it said, a typical day for Knight starts at 7 a.m. every morning when she wakes up to go to one of the most tedious jobs in prison. She makes headphones. That's her job. She's stuck in a factory every day from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. making headphones on a big loud machine. Knight is said to be one of the best workers in the headphone factory and commands the top wage. She gets through more work than anyone. She enjoys her job and takes pride in what she does. 4 guards flank her. They watch her every move and are with her every day. After Knight finishes off her day at the headphone factory, she eats lunch before retiring to her cell. So, you know, that's what she's doing. And it says that in her cell, she has a bed, clothes, and the centerpiece of her room is a big old table that she uses for her crafts and her art that she does. And she also likes to sit at the table and write letters.
I just like, part of me is really concerned that they let her knit.
Right. Like, they're sharp. They're knitting needles. Like, what?
I was like, at first, like that passed me by, but then I'm like looking at my crochet hooks and I'm like, I could stab someone with that, like with enough force. This woman, I mean, I get that she's older now, but like she got nothing but time.
Yeah.
She ain't getting out.
Right? And apparently, like, her cell is very cluttered. It said she has, quote, shit everywhere. And basically anything she's given, she keeps type of thing. But, like, not many people come into her room, probably because they're scared of her. But they try to make it like, she's so private. And I'm like, it's probably because no one wants to be around her. And no surprise, but friends don't visit her, you know. I'm like, was anybody surprised about that? No. So, yeah, that is what she's doing these days, I guess. She's still alive from my understanding. So, I didn't see a death date or anything. So, she's just chilling in prison.
Yeah, she's alive.
Making headphones and knitting.
I'm over here like, what headphones does she make? Like, have I owned a pair of headphones this woman has made?
I hope not.
Because I've owned a lot of headphones in my life.
Right?
It's like, is this why Beats by Dre is so expensive?
Oh my God. Oh, but anyways, that is going to go ahead and wrap us up for today. We hope we didn't scar you too much with this case. It is very disturbing and it makes me really sad for Pricey and their kids and everything because I'm sure they've went through it once this actually got public. You know, it's heartbreaking for sure. But we will go ahead and see you guys on Thursday. Bye.
Bye.